Good morning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our video today. I'm Sunny Galt with New Mommy Media. We produce audio podcasts and videos for new and expecting parents. We love partnering with Scripps Health and the San Diego Parent Connection for topics that you want to know more information about. So if you ever have any ideas, feel free to shoot them over to newmommymedia.com. We've got a contact form on the website, and we'd love to do a video about a topic that interests you. But today, we are talking with an expert who's been on our videos quite a bit in the past, Noni Levi. She is a marriage and family therapist, and she's joining us now. Hi, Noni.
Hi, Sunny.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to see you today. Why don't you start by telling everyone just a little bit about yourself if they haven't watched the previous videos that you've been on with us in the past.
Okay. I am a marriage and family therapist, been in private practice, I think about 30 years. Worked with Parent Connection since my son was born, and he's now 25. So for 25 years, I've been with Parent Connection, and we used to do more active, people would show up for talks, and this is the new unfolding media now. So been doing talks for Parent Connection for, over 25 years. So parenting and couples work is my two areas of expertise.
All right. And today we're talking about strategies for your persistent child. Noni, I feel like I have 4 persistent children right now between the ages of 7 and 3. So this is a topic I can definitely benefit from, as well as probably a lot of parents out there that are watching right now. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. When we say persistent, maybe we should start with a definition of what persistent is, because I personally don't think persistent all the time is a bad thing. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't think persistence is a bad thing, period. And what I want to piggyback on what you said, Sunny, you have 4 persistent children. So an apple usually doesn't fall far from the tree. So many times we see parents who have a persistence temperament trait. Either one or more of their children also have that. So there's not a bad thing. In fact, there's a book that was written on emotional intelligence by Daniel I want to say Goldberg. I probably am getting that wrong, years ago, probably the book's about 20, maybe even 10 years old. I don't know. But he talked about emotional intelligence. And one of the qualities is persistence. People who get things done are, someone who they set a goal, and no matter what roadblocks get in their way, still accomplish that goal. So when you have a 2-year-old with a goal of getting to the stereo equipment or to the computer equipment, and that's their goal, and they don't have the cognitive understanding that they could hurt the equipment, blah, 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 we get annoyed with that kind of persistence. But that very character trait that is hard for parents to deal with when children are young is the one that will take them further down the road in life. So it's one of those you are cursing when they're little and probably thanking when they get older, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And, the things that my kids do all the time, as you're saying this, I'm like, yep, they do that. Yep, they do that. But then I stop myself sometimes from getting upset, because I'm like, exactly what you said. That is a great trait if used in the right way, and if it doesn't end in some sort of crying fit. That's what I get frustrated with, right? They're so persistent, and I'm like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, this is why you can't do that. Wah! And things just kind of explode.
Right. And so that's one of those things as a parent, you just have to, I'm reminded of a story I read a long time ago, and it was in a book and I can't remember what, but a dad his daughter was throwing a temper tantrum. She was about 3 years old. They were in a restaurant. He tucked her under her arm. She went screaming out the door, and he had to tell himself, I am having a relationship with the people in that restaurant for about 5 minutes of my life. I'm having a relationship with this little girl the rest of my life. It's important for a parent to be able to let go of the scene the child is creating so that they can parent more effectively. You can't get overwhelmed with the crying and screaming, although it is overwhelming. It's one of those things, one of the quotes I like to quote all the time is, a child who continues to test boundaries over the age of 3 has been trained to do so from their parent. So one of the things that parents who have a persistent child have a hard time with is that screaming and yelling. So they'll do anything to stop that. And sometimes they'll say yes to something they said no to. I used to teach used to run a support group for parents of spirited kids. And one of the things I said, if you have a child with a temperament trait of persistence, that they will constantly test your boundaries. And the thing you have to do with these children is set the boundaries, because a negative aspect of a persistent child who has a parent who is more too kind, not firm enough, doesn't set good boundaries, is they tend to grow up to be an entitled adult. They think the world runs around them because people are afraid to tell them no. And no is an important word to a persistent child. And it's a hard word because it usually does, especially in those early years and those more challenging toddler years, set off temper tantrums.
So when we get into these power struggles with our kids, what's the end goal? Like for a child, from their perspective, are they just trying to win the battle, or is there a larger war here that they're trying to come out victorious in?
No, I think they're just trying to win the battle. But if they win every battle, then they're going to learn that they can do this kind of behavior to win every battle. And then you get a bully down the road. And, it's like, people, that could be a term that's used for sometimes persistent people because they can learn to bully people to get what they want. But it's usually every battle. I want to get to the computer. So, and if they're really intent on that, redirecting them and just turning them around. Like I used to say, a typical toddler can be turned around from something they're trying to get that you don't want them, an inappropriate device, 3 times, and you could get them over to their toys and their Play-Doh or whatever, and they would be distracted. A persistent child would be 20 times. It depends on the level, but some, when they have a goal in their mind, they're gonna try to achieve it, and they don't understand why they can't. So part of it is they don't really understand it, so it just takes the adult authority figure to be able to set that boundary and that limit. And the examples that I'm gonna give are helpful in that situation to help a parent through that.
So let's talk about some of these strategies and these tactics that can help parents who have persistent kids. The first one is using loving guidance. Tell us about that.
Okay, so this one is easy to describe when I used to do talks where people were sitting in the audience. It's a little hard over the computer, but I'll try. So I'm going to want people to focus in on my face, because the 3 keys to using loving guidance, and you have to use all 3. If you don't use all 3, the child will play you a little bit. So what they are is you want to have direct eye contact with that child. Then you want to not talk at all, no words whatsoever. 99.9% of power struggles with children are verbal. And so there's no talking, and then there's just a smiling. And I call it my Stepford wife face or my Vicodin after C-section face. And so I pretend like nobody's home and is not bothered in the least by this behavior in front of them. But they would like to kill the child in their own head. They might be even saying that, but they do it with a smile on their face, but they don't say a word. So what children learn is, and I literally would use this technique when I used to teach, Parent Connection used to have a classes called, I think they were Mommy and Me, and the moms would show up with their toddlers for these talks. Well, they would digress within about 30 minutes because most toddlers can't handle that. And we might have an object that a toddler in the room might have grabbed, a mom didn't see right away, and you just put your hand out. So use a good example of using loving guidance is you have that open, loving face. You don't say a word, but you look at the child and you put your hand out. And I had children who I never met before and never saw again who would put that pencil in my hand or the scissors in my hand. It is a very effective strategy. I used it a lot with my son throughout his younger years. When you get to the grocery store and they want to grab all that candy off there, I remember my son would come up and he would go, "Mom, can I?" And I would just put my hand out and smile. The very first time I did it, when he grabbed candy at the store, when he'd gotten out of the, he'd been old enough to be out of the cart, he started to grab the candy and put it close to him. So I just kept smiling, but he didn't know the rule. So then I go, "Do you want Mom to put the candy back, or do you want to put the candy back?" So I actually piggybacked on 2 tools there. I started with using loving guidance, and then when he didn't comply, I gave him a choice to comply. Okay, and you may have a child who will scream. You will put the candy back. They might even run to go get the candy and get it again. You again take it out of their hand, you put it back. They may have a full temper tantrum. At that point, you move your cart to the side, you go outside to your car or on the steps and tell the child that when they calm down, we'll go back into complete shopping. Some kids need to be in a car. I mean, they get very loud, and some kids have horrendous temper tantrums, really, that can last for a while. Head banging, parents need to put a pillow under their head. So it may last longer, and that just probably gives you a window until you have a more persistent child, or that you have not been good at setting boundaries. So sometimes parents who will say no, 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 yes, they're training their child to go to respond. If I ask mom enough, or if I'm persistent enough, mom will give up or
Right.
dad will give up. So it could be twofold that. So you want to check in with yourself. Am I good at setting boundaries? And if you're not, there's some wonderful books out there to learn. I also have a handout, and I'd be happy to send it to anybody, snail mail. And Sunny's more than welcome to put up my phone number or my um, email, and I will be happy to send you the brochure. It's on setting limits through redirecting children's behavior, and it's a wonderful brochure, brief and very, very concise. So using loving guidance is the first tool that you can do.
Okay. And then you mentioned giving choices. So that was the
Yeah, and I kind of jumped down to another one down, but yes, giving choices. Now, what I used to always talk to parents about with giving choices, it is usually the first thing you can do with toddlers, if they're verbal, if they're pretty verbal. I remember the first choice I gave to my son is he was probably about 18 months. He could climb in and out of the high chair. He had left his puzzle on the floor, and I said, you need to pick up your puzzle before we have lunch, and he got in a power struggle with him. Or I got one in with him as well. So I said, well, do you want to put it away before lunch or after lunch? And he kind of grunted and went to his high chair. So he got down from lunch and he started to walk by the puzzle again. And I went back to that technique of using loving guidance. And I just stopped before he got past the puzzle. I smiled. I did a Vanna White. I just smiled, kind of waved to the puzzle, didn't say a word. And he went, oh, and he picked it up and put it back. Now you might have a more persistent child, and and if you're not really good at the technique, in other words, if I went to use loving guidance, and I'm jumping back and forth because there's aspects where it's not one way, you have to incorporate a few techniques sometimes with children. So if I had all of a sudden gotten a stern face and just pointed at the puzzle, he would have said, ooh, mom's in a power struggle, right? That's my cue. All right, I'm ready to fight. So a parent may have had a tight face, may have had a firm, look, not a open, loving, I'm on Vicodin and I can handle anything, because that's what, after my C-section, I don't remember any of those things. So do you see what I'm saying about, you really need to, so it might have goofed up just because of that. Or it could be that the child's really persistent, or the child might need a nap at that point. So they're not going to be as cooperative, no matter what, There's some points when children are tired, hungry, or sensitive to things that even these techniques don't work. So you always have to check in. Is my child ready for a nap? Is that why they're being uncooperative? Did my face get too tight? They sensed a power struggle. Did I not give a good choice? So that's the thing about parenting. There's no one way.
Yeah.
There's no simple solution. You kind of have to think on your feet all the time.
The next one is finding useful ways to make your children feel powerful, which I feel like could kind of tie right into giving choices, right? Because you're letting them choose something. I would imagine that gives them some power, right?
Correct. That is one way to gain power. Another way that enough parents don't do enough of in this generation, nor my generation, is getting them to do activities and chores in the family. In 1947, 1 in 4 kids grew up on a farm. You can imagine what it would be like growing up on a farm. Everybody had to contribute before you could even get out the door. And then many of these young people went to one-room schoolhouses. So the teacher, who was one authority figure, would depend on the older kids to help with the younger. So everybody had a sense of feeling they were needed, they were valuable, and they were powerful. Well, in today's world, we have so many conveniences. We live busy lives. We have people helping us with chores that would have, maybe you have cooking services come in, or the box drop, like that's going to be at my house today, that, gives you all your ingredients for your cooking, saves you time of going to the grocery store. We have so many modern conveniences. We have maybe a housekeeper that comes in. And not everybody has this luxury that's going to hear this, but we do have more conveniences. So we many times don't expect children to pitch in. A 2-year-old can sort dark and light laundry, can help to bring that laundry into the washer and dryer area. They can sort recyclables. They can turn lights off and on. Some of the tasks I gave my son as he got a little older, he would fold my flyers that I had, the trifolds. And he was doing that like at about, I would say 6 and 7. He was helping to bake the cookies. We used to bring cookies to our parenting classes. See what you're missing back in now the old days, you used to get cookies. So we would bring cookies to the parenting classes and he would make them. He would literally, and my son is the cook in his relationship. So I had him cracking eggs from 18 months old at a little stool. And the first time he ever did, it was a mess all over the stove, but you know, he was able to become proficient in things. So you want to have your kids be a part of the family. So look to chores and things they can do that they like to do, and rotate them if you have more than one child. You know, have them, what one friend did when she had 3 kids is that every week they would show up for a family meeting and they would rotate which child got to pick which 3 chores they were going to do for that week. So it gives everybody a sense of, you know, not being stuck with doing the doggy poo or taking out the trash every week. So be creative, get your kids, and there's actually, and I'd be happy to send this to anybody, you could email me. There's 2 pages in the redirecting book that talks about things that children can start doing from 18 months on to help in the home. So that's another way to make them feel powerful.
What about teaching your child to say no respectively? How do you do that?
Okay. So I know in my generation, when we used to ask this all the time, how many of you were allowed to say no and get away with it? When I was growing up, you couldn't. You know, there was absolutely no room for choice. We didn't get choices. There was, you know, and we're raising our children differently today, a little more consciously, a lot more, you know, things they're going to have to deal with in the world that we didn't. But so I always ask people, I said, is there anybody in the room that doesn't want to be able to say no, you know, as an adult? And everybody wants that right to be able to say no at times. So you want to teach them, say no, mom. Like one time Jimmy didn't want to, it was his job to set the table. And he says, I don't want to set the table, mom. And I said, okay, I can understand that. What would you be willing to do? Would you like to load the dishwasher or would you like to rinse the dishes? You know, so I jumped to a choice, but I also was respecting that he might not want to do that, that he might have another idea. So it was teaching him that, yes, we have a right to say no to things. And is that not an important quality for children to learn too? You know, when you think about my generation, we grew up to respect all authority figures, and there were authority figures that were to be respected because they were, you know, I mean, we talk about sexual abuse of children. One of the things is the children that usually many times get picked, they're more passive, they have a hard time saying no. They're many times, you know, they would, you know, you look into these scandals with the priest and everything, they would look for children who were coming from troubled homes, you know, and so it's important that our children can say no for themselves to the adults in the world, because sometimes adults ask things that you should say no to.
Okay, doing the unexpected. What do you mean by that?
Doing the unexpected is, I have a great story from I used to co-teach with another woman who had 3 kids. Katie wasn't vacuuming her room. That was an issue for Sherry. She did not, you know, it was non-negotiable. She wanted her daughter to vacuum her room. So they got in a power struggle in the morning. Katie stopped off to junior high. Sherry went up and put the vacuum in the middle of her bedroom floor with a note on it, feed me, I eat dust. And within about 3 minutes of Katie going home, Sherry didn't say a word. She went up to her room and all of a sudden she heard the vacuum going. Sometimes if we're more playful and we move away from something and we do something unexpected, it gets us out of the power struggle. If we're batting heads like this, we're just going to go keep batting heads like that. So be creative.
And the next one is win-win negotiation. What do you mean by that?
Well, that is, if the child's really stuck on something, you want to negotiate with them. You know, one of the things that Jimmy's little friend, when she was little, and was very persistent, she would get caught up in clothing issues. And so sometimes if she wanted to wear something that might not be appropriate for the weather, you know, I'd say, oh, if you really want to wear that light dress, would you be willing to wear this sweater or this jacket? So working out a win-win. So I might say, well, what would work for you, Emily? You know, for you to be able to wear your dress, what would work? Do these ideas work? So you want to negotiate with a child. Like Sherry also had a great story with her son, Kurt. He got in the teenage years and they had a family rule. Everybody showed up for the family birthday party and he had a concert he had wanted to go to. And so Sherry said, well, why don't you work it out with your dad? So the 2 of them worked it out that he would not go to the dinner party, but he and his dad would go out for breakfast after surfing together the next day. So what really was most important to Sherry is that the family connected with the people in the family during their birthdays. So Kurt and his dad were able to work out a win-win where Kurt could go to his concert, but they still got to spend time together around his birthday. So that's win-win, you know, an idea where everybody wins. It's not a win-lose.
letting go of your position, which can be difficult as a parent, right? Because you want to parent and you want your kid to do what you said they should do, right? So what do you mean by that? How can parents do that?
Well, for more persistent parents, Sunny and myself, it might be a little harder to let go of your position. I remember I had a really sweet story. Jimmy was probably about 2.5, and he wanted to bring stickers that he had down at the table in the family room up to his bath. And I was like, we have our bath toys, we have our, and I thought they might get ruined. I don't know what. It was like a silly thing. And so I was in a power struggle over it. And I said, okay, go ahead. And the sweetest thing happened. He went up and he goes, look, Mama, these dinosaurs are like the dinosaurs in my tub. It was like, so I got to see how his mind was starting to work because I let go of my position, So sometimes, parents that are not persistent don't have this issue. Persistent parents have this issue.
Does that go along with the whole idea of pick your battles? Because
Yes.
I find myself saying that a lot.
Yes. Do you want to, the thing I always want to say, because I'm very persistent, do I want to plant my flag, my white flag, die on that hill for that? It's like, it puts a perspective for me. I go, no, I'm not going to die on the hill on this one. This is not worth dying over. I need to let go of my position a little bit. Let me WinWin negotiate. Let me give a choice. There's so many other options. So exactly right.
Okay, and the last strategy is using signals.
Okay, I love this one. So when I first started my parenting business, working for, well, I wasn't working for, but I worked with Parent Connection. So I had my parenting line because we taught parenting classes through Parent Connection. So I had my business line in my bedroom. I didn't have an office at the time. And I had a bed that was a futon mattress. And so as soon as my phone would ring, my son would be somewhere in the house. He'd come in and start bouncing on the bed. And the one rule was that he couldn't bounce on my bed because it was a futon mattress. It could, the springs might go through. He could bounce on the old couch in the family room. We would let him bounce on. I had a blow up thing that he could bounce on. So when they're a certain age, you do want to give them something to bounce on or jump on. But that was the rule. So he would constantly do it. So I certainly couldn't, I'd get off the phone. I go, now, Jimmy, what has Mom said? And he goes, now bounce on the bed. And I said, that's right. You won't do it again. So we would do this. So finally, it was like, I don't know, I'd done it 10 times or whatever. So I got off the phone. I said, you know what? Mom is tired of telling you not to bounce on the bed anymore. And I said, I bet you're tired of Mom telling you. He goes, yes. And I said, well, can you give me a signal that I can give you if you choose to jump on my bed again? And he went, and I went, and he went, I go, perfect, because I'm on a phone trying to get people to take my parenting class. And if I have misbehaving children in the back and I go, God dang it, I said, don't jump on the bed. And I go, when did you want to take that parenting class? So I had to have a relatively sense of peace because if I'm going to teach, I got to practice what I'm teaching.
Right.
So sure enough, it was not 5 minutes later, another phone call came through. He starts, and I just go, see, I can do that on the phone. So I'm on the phone. And he went, oh, and he stopped. And he tested me probably 5 other times, and then he never did it again because it was no longer a power struggle between us. He chose. So the key to what I said was a signal you can give me when you choose to do that behavior, because it is a choice on his part. It is a misbehavior on his part. I wanted him to realize that when I said, when you choose to. And the signal gives them the power. So it's like giving them the power to give you the signal. And you probably wouldn't have your teenagers do this because the signal they might give you might be a little inappropriate.
Like a middle finger.
Yeah. So this is something you would want to use with younger children. I wouldn't, if you did choose it might be a sweet moment where they go, yeah, Mom, and they give you the finger. And then you go, well, could you choose something else? If you're playful and your buttons aren't going to be pushed at the time, you could absolutely do it. Because you might, in those teenage years, get a signal that you really don't, find too appropriate. So, I think another thing I want to say with power struggles, have a sense of humor. You're parenting for the long run. You have a long relationship with this child. It's have some fun with it. And if you are persistent, realize it, own it, and get good at some of the tools to get you out of that position. And if you're not a parent that has persistence, look about setting boundaries and check into that for yourself, because that's important. Kids need to hear no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Noni, thanks so much for being with us today. Pleasure to see you again. Are you going to go running now? I feel
I'm going to go walking at Torrey Pines State Beach.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
for
It's
you.
one of my favorite. I always do it on Tuesday. So she was willing. I usually go at 8 in the morning. So we're going to meet at 11. So.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for being with us today. For everyone that's watching this video, be sure to check out the San Diego Parent Connection, and that website is sandiegoparent.com. Also, check us out on New Mommy Media. That's my business. I do podcasts and videos like this, a lot of great content over on our website. If you like today's video, all that we ask is that you share it with another parent so we can help them out as well. And we'll see you guys back here on the next Hangout.